right. Well, thanks again to our sponsors. We couldn't have the show without them, and so we really appreciate all they do to sponsor our show so that we can be with you each and every week right here on The Light 95.9 at 8 a.m. every Saturday morning. So thanks for tuning in, and if you are just tuning in, we've been talking about planting. The first part of the show, we were talking about planting trees and shrubs and how they need to be high and so that the water will shed away from the trunk of the tree. But now we're going to talk about some things that actually likes to be planted deep. And you can actually take off some of the leaves and plant it even deeper. And that's tomatoes. And a tomato is a vine. And so when you put part of its stem down into the ground, it will all turn to root. So if you have had in the past like weak tomato plants and you have great big fruit and it gets so heavy that it knocks the plant over. Now, not that you don't need to cage or stake your tomatoes. You're still going to need to do that. But you can create a stronger stem if when you're planting your tomatoes, you take off some of the lower leaves and you actually plant it really deep into the soil. So let's say that when you buy your plant from your local independent garden center, or maybe you have grown them yourself and they're a foot tall. From the soil line in the flat or in the little tray that they're in, or the pot, whatever you've got them in, if you will take off half of the leaves up the stem and plant all of that into the soil. So half of ever how tall the plant is, you're going to plant that tomato plant that deep into the soil and pack the soil good around it. All of that will turn to root, which in turn will make your stem so much stronger that it will be able to support the fruit that much better. So that is one of those things that you can plant really deep, and it is a very good idea to do so. I even know some people that if their tomatoes get a little long and leggy before they get them in the ground, they actually will lay them on their side and just bend them slightly so that the stem doesn't break. But if it's real long, it's very pliable, as we all know, and they'll lay it all in their row and just leave up maybe 3 inches or 4 inches of the plant out of the ground, and the rest they pack in to the soil, and all of that again turns to root, making that stem that's out of the ground so much stronger. So, and if you're not sure how to do this, and over the radio it's not easy to understand, please stop in at the store and we will actually show you how to do it, and you will be amused and surprised and delighted on how your tomato plants do if you plant them like that. Now, there's a couple other things in the vegetable that you can plant the same way. And you can plant, and maybe not quite as deep as you will your tomatoes, but a lot of times when you start things in the cabbage family, like your cabbage or your broccoli or your cauliflower, even kale sometimes, when in the flats, it will get a little leggy and it doesn't look like its stem is going to be strong enough to hold a head of cabbage. Those are the other ones that you can plant deep and your stem will get stronger. So your cabbage plants and all of those things in that family, like your collards and your kohlrabi, your broccoli, your cauliflower, all of the kale, Brussels sprouts as well. You can plant all of those deep in the ground or in a pot. If you're doing them in a pot, you can plant those deep. Now, some of the ones you do not want to do that with are your pepper plants. You want to make sure that you do not plant your pepper plants too deep. You want to make sure that you're covering all the root and you can come just slightly above where they are in the flat or in the pot that you have been growing them in. But you don't want to bury them deep because they will get stem rot. And that's the same for your cucumber plants and your melons. All of those viners, you don't want to plant them too deep. Now, again, if you have root that's coming up out of the soil a little bit, you can cover all of that, but you don't want to come up the stem too far because they will get stem rot. Now, we're going to go off a little bit again of talking about just planting and talk about a couple of the things you should do when you're planting. When you are planting your vegetables or trees and shrubs, it's always a good idea to give them a little bit of nourishment at that time. So using the product like Green Nutrients from the Greenfield Farm Co-op, great fertilizer, all organic, a little stinky, but a wonderful, wonderful fertilizer, helps keep things dark and green. That dark green helps with photosynthesis, which is going to help with everything that goes on with your plant. We do recommend putting that down about a tablespoon with your vegetable plants. It also works great for trees and shrubs. So if you're putting that down as your starter fertilizer, it's going to work great with your trees and shrubs as well. With a tree and shrub, you're probably going to use about a cup of it, sprinkle a little bit in the bottom of your hole, and then sprinkle it in as you're backfilling as well, and that's going to feed all of those roots, and your plants will do great. Now, I've had another question about planting tomatoes and asking some odd questions. So, tomatoes do like more potassium, more calcium, and more magnesium. And that's what keeps them from getting blossom end rot. That black spot that's on the bottom of the tomato, some people think it's a disease. No, it's a nutrient deficiency, usually magnesium and calcium, but sometimes a little bit of potassium deficiency as well. So they have said, well, somebody told me to put powdered milk in and Epsom salts. And you can do those things. You can do all of that process, and that will work as well. You can use a tomato fertilizer like Tomato Blast from a nice local company, the Root Blast Company right here in Stark County, or the Tomato Tone. Both great tomato fertilizers, and they have all of that in it, so you don't have to do those extra steps. So those beginner gardeners, we would say just buy one of those fertilizers and just use that for your vegetables, and that's going to give you all that you need. If you are planting hundreds and hundreds of tomato plants, you might want to go ahead and get your Epsom salts, and I've never done powdered milk, but get a calcium supplement and put that on. Or if you have had a soil test and you know that your soil is deficient in those things, that's when you'd want to put those in. But always doing a little bit of a fertilization at the time of planting is going to be very beneficial to your plants, the vegetables, the fruits, as well as your trees and shrubs. Now, as a regular fertilizer, I like Garden Tone and Tomato Tone for your vegetable plants, Tree Tone for all of your trees, fruit trees, shade trees, ornamental trees as well. For your flowering shrubbery, I like to use Flower Tone and Plant Tone. I like to do the Plant Tone in the fall, and I like to do Flower Tone in the spring. That's going to aid in good flowering for your flowering shrubbery, like your azaleas and rhododendrons, your some of your other hydrangeas. Flower Tone in the spring, Holly Tone in the fall. But all of your other ones that needs a neutral pH, like the lilacs and the spirea and the weigelia, that's where you're going to use the Plant Tone in the fall and the Flower Tone in the spring. So it's a little bit of different there, but it's going to help with your flowering. And it's going to aid in having a nice strong plant by fertilizing both spring and fall. And we've had a lot of these questions, especially since we got the new plant material in. A lot of people had been calling in about it, and then they came in to get it, and then they've been asking these questions about, how do I keep these things looking good, all of those types of things. Now, we had one more question that I wanted to answer, and it was about planting, but it was about a specific plant. The quince is also known as crepe myrtle in our gardening era, and it is a plant that has multiple stems that goes into the ground. And I was explaining to these folks about how to plant their tree, And then we went over and was looking at the quince, and they saw all these multiple stems, and they said, so when I plant this, I don't just have one stem, there's multiples of them. How do I do this? So what you want to do if you have something that is multi-stemmed, you want to shed the soil away from all of those stems, how they are in the pot, because sometimes they will completely fill up the pot. And you want to make sure that the soil sheds away from all of that, and you still will have the same effect. Those types of plants are sometimes a little bit messy, because with all of those stems, they will hold a lot of stuff over the winter, and it is good if you can get in there and get that cleaned out. But it's not going to terribly hurt the plant if you can't get all of it out. So don't make yourself crazy when you're planting it and there's debris that's left in from the year past. You can tip the plant upside down, put your fingers through it with the glove on, and a lot of it will fall out that way. You can put that into the hole. It's going to decompose and just add organic matter to the plant material. But still, if it's a multi-stem plant, you still want to make sure that the soil is shedding away from that. Well, I want to go over everything that's going on this weekend before we end the show, and all of the sales and the special hours. So if you weren't with us at the beginning of the show, our special hours for the weekend. Today, we opened at 8. We will be open till 5. Tomorrow, Sunday, instead of 11 to 3, we will be open from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. But Monday, we will only be open from 8 a.m. till 1 p.m. The sales that we have going on this weekend are all red, white, and blue petunia hanging baskets. That's solid colors or mixed, but all the red, white, and blue hanging baskets that are done up by petunias are 25% off. And all of our gazania, pansy, and snapdragon flats are buy 2, get 1 free. And we also have a free tomato plant. They're beef steaks, so it's a nice slicer to give away to everyone that shops this weekend, and to all of our military active or past that comes in on Monday. We have a nice larger plant to give to you. We want to thank all of our military, and remember that that is really what Memorial Day is all about, is honoring not just our family members that has passed, but really thinking about and honoring our servicemen who has died protecting the luxuries that we have here every day, that we don't even think about because they're here all the time. But the sacrifice that not only the soldiers made by losing their lives, but their families gave up their loved ones. So we want to thank all of the families also that has lost someone in service, protecting us and fighting for our freedoms. We want to thank all of you. Have a blessed weekend. We'll be right back here with you next Saturday morning, June 1st. Can you believe it? Right here on the Light, 95.9. Have a great week.